PodcastCoug Season 4, Episode 11.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we are all things Cougar football. 30 minutes of Coug Talk. We're talking about our stellar performance against Stanford. Anthony Gordon in our next game against Oregon State, of course. It's senior day. It's Saturday. It's tomorrow. Hey, Cougs, 5-5, 2-5 in the conference. Oregon State, 5-5, 4-3. And, you know, Cougs last Saturday boat race, Stanford 49-22, another sellout game. Actually, in Martin, it's the second home game sellout in 56 days. 33,000 hammering Stanford 49-22, and extended the Cougs win streak over to the Cardinals to 4 games in a row. So we've got Stanford's number and David Shaw's number. Stanford, is where the offense never allowed a punter on the field. We never punted ever once. I can't remember the last time we ever literally played a game without punting the football, right? No punts during the entire game. Amazing. I can't recall that ever happening, and that's obviously a good thing. Offensively, it was just a great game, right? Cougs went out, especially the second half, right? Cougs went out, did the right thing, executed brilliantly, and, Gordon was exceptional, just sharp, putting the ball where he wanted to, when he wanted to, where he wanted it. And the receivers would say, hey, give me the ball right here where I need it, right here where I want it. And he did, so just an overall stellar performance by the team in general, a complete game. Really, we don't see many of these complete games, right? I mean, think about it. Coach Leach has won, 36 football games in Pullman in the last 4 years. That equates to like 9 home wins a year. That's just absolutely amazing. What a ride it's been. So Leach has exceeded a lot of people's expectations, right? And it hasn't for me, but I mean, I'm not saying, I expected, right? I mean, when you're on 60 Minutes, you're a genius. I keep saying that, and this is when he was at Tech. So, guys, this is a transitional year. It's not a rebuilding year. We can't expect to win 11 games every year like Alabama, right? We just can't expect that. We're not the USC branded school or the Alabama branded school. But when we have a down year, it's not really rebuilding. It's transitioning. We're transitioning this year, and this season, whether we go 6-6 or 7-5, it could be better, right? But like I said, transition year with the coaching, change in Tracy Claeys. We've had the bad. We've been on the foot has been on the wrong shoe most of the time this season, or half the time, especially with that meltdown with UCLA, and then the close ones against Oregon and Cal. And we should be grateful to have a conversation about going to a bowl game, right? And literally we could end up at 8-5 if the Huskies don't show up on the day after Thanksgiving. Literally, yeah. So anyway, 5 bowl games in a row. Not trying to put the cart before the horse, but it would be 5 in a row. Remember, Max Borghi came out right after the Stanford game and said, "You know what? We're going to beat Oregon State." He just took that leadership. It's not necessarily bulletin board material if we kind of leave it at that, but anyway. So anyway, besides Gordon, leading the way, you've got Borghi, Gordon, and we're going to talk about those guys. Of course, Arconado, and we need that. We need something to keep in mind. Max touched the ball 12 to 15 times last game, and when he does, we tend to win. When he touches the ball less than 10 times, we're in jeopardy of losing if you look at the past. So interesting fact, though, we got to continue to give Borghi the ball, max it out at least 15 times. Well, at least 12, but 15, and we're a winner. I mean, almost chicken dinner, right? We are the winner chicken dinner. Less than 10 times, it's really suspect. So again, we need to max it out with Borghi. Stanford win overall, good performance. True, they're a different team this year. They've been, than in the past. Our defense stepped up in the second half. I mean, just what an amazing second half. Big for the Cougs. I think by far the best second half game of sound football in Washington State has played all season. By far, that is probably not only the best half, but probably our best game of the season. So it's 4 in a row against Stanford with a freshman class that's going to graduate and never have lost to the Cardinal, to the tree. And you take Jihad Woods, who's playing lights out. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of other guys on defense that we can really hang our hat to that are flying around. I mean, let's face it, we have one of the weakest defenses in the Pac-12. We're like number 9, and certainly we're up there in the hundreds in the country. So our defense isn't that tough, but we're going to put points up. We're going to score some points. And if you're not too dimensional, we're going to be fine, right? So that's 4 in a row, again, like I said, with Stanford. And what about our offensive line, right? Luke Falk is going, are you kidding me? I mean, do you remember Luke? Unfortunately, we used to call him Zombie Luke. I mean, he was just to get hit and slam on the ground. those light concussions. I mean, you think about it. Luke would just, the O-line, when Luke was around, he would just get hammered and sacked and knocked down so much. And where's that O-line he's going? When I had it, look at Gordon. He just stands there in the pocket all day long, right? Anthony Gordon is the reason why we've won so many games this season. I mean, yeah, it's Arconado and it's also Borghi and a couple other guys, but he's it's just amazing. And so, he's the true accurate gunslinger. He takes the risk. He's just confident. And he says, I am Anthony Gordon. He was behind Luke. He watched Luke Falk. He watched Gardner Minshew. He had that opportunity to stand, those couple of years and be patient. And that's significant about Anthony Gordon, that he's created his own personality, his own persona, as a quarterback in Leach's system, right? So statistically, of course, he's leading the nation. We know that. It's just amazing. It's incredible. It's our guy leading the country, better than Minshew, and you see a different caliber of quarterback and an elite status that he's taken, right? And a real good pocket presence. He's got really good pocket. You know what? I just wish he was going to be back next year. I mean, he is my favorite all-time Washington State quarterback. He just is. He's just, I just hope he makes it to the next level. No question will he make it to Canada, but I think he's going to go pro. I think he's got the ability. The skill, I think he's got it. Of course, he's so accurate. He can throw the long ball. He if he's got an O-line in front of him, and he can run a little bit. He's a little bit immobile, right? So you see this different caliber, this different. He's really good has really good pocket presence, and he's got some good attributes that he's learned under Luke and Gardner, right? And you've got the perfect world, the perfect scenario, right? Literally, we've never seen better. He's just got the touch. He's got the gun, and it's too bad. Like I said, we don't have him for one more year. Not just Gordon, but Arconado as well. But just one more year of Anthony and Brandon. To think about, Brandon Arconado was a true walk-on. It's just a great story in college football, right? A true walk-on. I mean, he's one of the best stories in the Pac-12, right? He simply knows what he's doing and where he's going. And, simply amazing. I mean, surprise. It's just a surprise our season isn't magical with Gordon, Arconado, and Borghi. It's just amazing. And you look at Borghi, look at Max, once in a long time we see a guy like this, the talent that Max has. And like I said, we got to give him the ball 15 times. Another 100 yards on the ground, 34 in the air, a special guy, just special. He stays healthy too. He just doesn't look injury prone. We're talking about 3 players capable, no doubt, of playing on Sunday. Gordon, Arconado, and Borghi. Now back to Stanford. I think Stanford's better than people give them credit, especially for their wide receiver position. I mean, they have some guys, right? I mean, they are definitely in a rebuilding, but some great receivers and playmakers. The problem with Stanford, and it played right into our game plan, is that they were one-dimensional. They ran the ball, 10 times? Are you kidding me? As a one-dimensional offense, our defense can handle that way better than two-dimensional, right? Look at Utah. We couldn't stop them. Stanford wasn't really a threat. And I'm surprised that David Shaw doesn't run the ball more, because he's known to do that. But this is their down year, as Shaw has been to a bowl game, 8 years in a row? Are you kidding me? We're talking about going 5 years in a row. David Shaw, 8 years in a row. And of those 8, under Shaw, there's been 3 Rose Bowls. And of the 3 Rose Bowls, they have won 2 out of 3. People forget. I mean, do you remember what you had for dinner 2 nights ago? I mean, it certainly is a down year for Stanford, and they're certainly not having a good year. And so I don't want to say we didn't play anybody last Saturday, but I'm telling you, that 49-22, Stanford just didn't execute. They didn't look like they just didn't look like they wanted to win and perform. It's like they were just showed up, and another plane ride, another meal. Let's just show up and play football. But they just didn't seem like they have the fire in them. At least that's and it was a great game. It was a wonderful game in Pullman. It was always good to be back in Pullman and hit all the normal places, and it was a great day. And if you notice, it was a beautiful weather day. It was a little cloudy in the morning, so the Cougs did what they do best. And on a night that we saw Eric Gordon hit 500 passing yards for the second time this season, and he threw his 39th touchdown of the year to surpass Gardner Minshew for the single season record, which is basically 38. So Gordon's got the record at 39, most productive passing offense in college football. We use Max Borghi more than usual. Like I said, 15 carries, 111 yards, a touchdown, and the Cougs just outperformed the trees, and which has really been, Cardinal has historically been a lot more proficient than that. So, Cougs finished with 104 rushing yards, and Stanford had 6 rushing yards. Are you kidding me? Jahad Woods broke 100 tackle barrier, leading the Cougs with 9, and he had one of the team's 2 sacks. So Gordon's top receiver again, Arco, who finished 9 catches, 148 yards, 1 touchdown. Aesop Winston Jr., 11 catches, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns. And again, Washington State did not punt at one time. No punts. That's unheard of. Of course, Brian Mazza is 18-18. We'll talk about that again. Just perfect for Brian. And with 2 Pac-12 games remaining, and potentially a bowl game after this, Washington State beats Oregon State tomorrow. Saturday, Washington State, we've got this great opportunity. Like I said, back to Mazza. He's 18 of 18 of field goal attempts. Sophomore, one of only 5 kickers in FBS, which remains perfect this season. So he is in the top 5 in the country who is perfect. And so, hey, we're going to, speaking about perfect, we're almost perfect against the Beavs. We've had the Beavs numbers for many, many years, especially in a row, although every once in a while, Oregon State sneaks up on us, right? And speaking about Oregon State, we're going to talk about Oregon State, the Beavs, right here next on the second half of the Podcast Coug, coming up next right here on the Podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the Podcast Coug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where we're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs, and the Cougs 5-5, 2-5 in conference. Oregon State 5-5, 4-3 in conference. 17-2 at home is Washington State since 2017. We're 17-2. Wow, that is amazing. Take that in your best college town in the Pac-12, Oregon State, right? They advertise and market it that they're the best college town in the Pac-12 and one of the best in the country. And yes, Corvallis is awesome. It's amazing. It is absolutely incredible, and it is a great college town. But you know what? You might have the best college town in the Pac-12 and certainly in the state of Oregon, but you have no football tradition, right? Are you a basketball school or a baseball school? You know what? You are a good university, I have to say. Once in a while, maybe every 20 years, Oregon State wakes up. I'll tell you, Jonathan Smith is doing a great job, though. He really is. And he could get coach of the year. He could be. It is possible, either that or Utah is going to coach of the year. So best college town, yes. Tradition, no. But they're going to see if they can prove it on Saturday, right? Oregon State is going to have really, they need to be two-dimensional to beat us. And I mentioned that in the first half of the Podcast Coug, right? If they're going to be one-dimensional and just throw all day long, that's fine. But if they're going to have a running game, a solid running game, and an air game, that's both in the air and on the ground, they're going to have to score and play their best game of the year. Yes, they've got Civil War coming up against Oregon, but right now this is their best and biggest game of the year. They've never faced anybody like Washington State this year, right? It's Jonathan Smith's second year. Quarterback Jake Luton is having a remarkable senior season, throwing 23 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. He's coming off a 4-touchdown performance in a 35-34 win over Arizona State. And the receiver Isaiah Hodgins is one of 2 Pac-12 receivers with more than 1,000 yards. Hodgins has 73 receptions, 13 touchdowns. They've got guys, It appears that Oregon State is going to get Colby Taylor back in its lineup. So they have some guys, and likely be Oregon State's greatest defensive challenge of the season. There's no question about it. I mean, if we just light them up. Air Gordon, are you kidding me? Max Borghi, are you kidding me? This is the weapons we have. It's just, I mean, they better be ready. They are in for a defensive challenge, right? So this, like I said, and the Civil War is going to be by far their biggest challenge of the year. The Beavs they have not figured out how to slow down the air raid. So the Cougs are blitzing opponents with the best, the best pass. It's difficult to slow us down for several years. We're averaging 442 yards a game. We're ranked 9th in the country, and of course, the Cougs lead the Pac-12 in scoring, passing, and total offense, first downs, and sacks allowed. So, as mentioned before, Gordon is on a record warpath, right? Throwing for 4,300 yards, 39 touchdowns. Anthony is 4 touchdowns short of the Pac-12 season record, and he needs just 466 yards to break Gardner's conference record that Gardner beat last year. So he's 466 yards away. Gardner only had that for 1 year, right? So let's see what happens in the next 2 games. Now, remember, Oregon State has yet to make a successful field goal in 2 months. Their kicking game is not good, especially when you're comparing it to Blake Mazza, who, like I said, he's 18 of 18, Mr. Perfect Mazza. So, but look at the season and how it's been defined, starting with the departure way back. We're talking about our season, Tracy Claeys, then the UCLA meltdown, the tough losses to Oregon and Cal that were close, and you're able to withstand it and still have a successful season. We're heading in the right direction. I mean, it is Leach's eighth season, and I'm tired of the rumors about Leach leaving. I don't think he's a person. I think Pullman's a good fit. He's obviously, his compensation is good, and I don't see any reason. I just don't see it. Not now anyway. Anyway, remember, we're going to honor Tyler Helinski, basically close that chapter, and remember, it's senior day. Looking at the program next year, we're going to have some good quarterbacks coming back for a couple of years, and we have a chance to be bowl eligible for a streak that is alive and well. So Saturday, we're going to have we have the opportunity for a huge victory heading into the Apple Cup, the AC. It's a short week. Hopefully, there's going to be students staying for the game. And let's keep our bowl streak alive. Every team that Oregon State has played hasn't shown a great defense. Every team that they've played and beat, they put 48 points. Now this is back to Oregon State. They put 48 points up on UCLA, 56 on Arizona, and then they put 35 on Arizona State. And one thing that sticks out about Oregon State's about their offense is really when they win, they're not winning teams that have great defenses. So it appears that every time they play a team that hasn't been very good on defense, Oregon State, is going to score a bunch of points and they're going to win. They won by 48 and 56 and 35 points. That said, it appears that they're legit and certainly can be on Saturday. Can't just take them lightly. Even though we've got history shows that Oregon State is just Oregon State, we can't take them lightly. I think our guys are going to be ready. We got that great home advantage record in the past 2 years. It's the Cougs versus the Beavs, the last home game of the season. It's senior day, 6 o'clock, Pac-12 networks, and that's it for the episode 11 of season 4 of the podcast Coug. Let's damn the Beavers, right? Talk to you next week, and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at podcastcoug.com.
N-G-T